Hello and welcome to today's session on private networks podcast series. In this podcast series, we plan to cover various deployments of private networks across industries. We will cover the key aspects of the deployments, including the use cases, the operational aspects, the spectrum planning, the network security, architecture, and also the key challenges that the deployments faced, as well as what's the future outlook. I'm Hima Kadia from TeckNexus, and I would like to welcome Mika, who is my co-host, and our first guest, Morten Brandstrup, who is the head of news technology at TV2 Denmark. Welcome, Mika. Welcome, Morten.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Hema.
Mika, you want to start with the introduction, and then Morten,
Yes.
maybe get a brief introduction, and then move on to the questions.
Yes, we can do so. So Mika Skarp, and I've been in a telecom business about the 25 plus years, and the last 5 years looking at the private mobile network side. That how can we use the mobile technology for different verticals? And I'm in my day job. I work for Kumukor. That's a small company from Finland, originally an university spin-off, and we are in a many aspects kind of a pioneers in the private mobile networks. Yeah, taking care in the Kumukor kind of a sales, marketing, product management type of things.
And I'm Morten Brandstrup. I'm head of news technology at TV2 Denmark, working in the news department with production and innovation around new way of doing production, basically, overlooking the facility for our national broadcaster. We are a national broadcaster, commercial operation. We have to be very lean and efficient. We're running 24-hour news channel. We're operating primetime news and bunch of digital online presence as well. So we are by far the leading news provider in Denmark. And beside that, we're also doing sports production. We have a sports department doing everything from Olympic to World Cup football and Tour de France and all that stuff. My own background is as broadcast. I more or less have all function in production since more than 35, nearly 40 years back when I started and entering this business. So I've been photographer, sound engineer, directors, graphic, you name it, I've done it. But it's always been focusing on live storytelling. That's really what my heart is beating for. It's everything live, and that's of course a big thing of when we're doing news. This also led to that I've spent a lot of my time in a SAP truck. I'm one of these guys that broke the monopoly in Denmark by establishing a company with SAP dish on the roof and was doing Tour de France and Le Mans and Eurovision Song Contest and all this stuff, driving around in Europe, covering news and event and sport and so on. And all this is changed, and now it's more or less all we do is contributing via mobile network. And that's lead into the interest of first 4G, now 5G, and different flavors of 5G technology.
Thank you, Mika, and thank you, Morten, for that introduction. Let's begin with our first question. So, Morten, what was the initial vision behind TV2 Denmark's for deploying private 5G network, and how did it align with your broader digital transformation goals?
Well, in reality, we're not very interested in private 5G network. That's maybe a surprise, but the point is that we will prefer not to deal too much with wireless network, so to speak. But in the lack of trusted network on location, which gives us the security and reliance that we need for production. we had to go in that direction. We learned from the journey on 4G that we could achieve a lot, and especially for news gathering, for news contribution, where latency was not a big issue. But we also saw it was still lagging of a lot of facility and a lot of services that we could see was necessary to improve the overall production setup. And in the commercial network, that is sadly enough, it's still not possible, or it's not offered at all. And that was why it led to, let's take care of this ourselves and deploy the private network. And the whole story in our case started up with the 5G record project, which was where we were invited into some of this study that we have done together with Kumiko, with EBU, and case-wise it was BBC and RAI. So it was in a collaboration around that. We started the journey with 5G private network.
Okay, that's really interesting historical or kind of how it all got started and how it kind of relates to the new way of working and so on. But how would you kind of describe the deployment? What kind of in the current situation that what you have? So what do you have in production?
We do now have a kit as a basically pretty simple, but it's 5G, so it's very advanced. So we have a core and a radio part. So it's the antenna, the radio, which we can easily deploy, and then the core setup. And with the core is basically just a server with very advanced software from Kumiko, but that's what it is. It's a server and the radio. And we've now taken this into production. So we moved it from the stage where it was just trials and POCs and all this stuff into really as a daily operation. And the thing here is that that single antenna, so the single radio, which is similar to what most people know as an access point, same form factor more or less. We can connect multiple camera and all the communication around the camera, because most people, you might think that we are just interested in getting video from the camera and back to the studio, to the gallery, wherever that is. But we are actually having a bunch of communication between the camera operator and the whole rack and the data center and the gallery behind that. We need to control the camera. We need to, so we have different types of machine control. We have tele information, and we also have audio as a communication to the photographer out there. And all this, we can, instead of having multiple different radio systems, we can now just use one radio and 5G private radio. And that means that it's very easy to set up. We are saving a lot of time in just having as bringing in one radio connected to one core and feed multiple camera back to the gallery.
So, Morten, continuing on that point, you mentioned that wireless camera workflow was one of the key use case, and you had good efficiency and cost savings on that. What were some of the other use cases that you leverage, like maybe something more on the live broadcast coverage and any efficiency on that perspective, or any other use cases that you think really benefited from the deployment of private 5G, and some measurable outcomes of those deployment for those particular use cases?
Yeah, as it's in content production, the wireless camera, the mobile camera that you can move around is a key and a very essential for everything from sports venue to entertainment. You've probably all seen a camera rig on the stage if there's artists playing around there. But it's so that's one kind of production type where you would like to have not only one but probably multiple of these camera roaming around. But we are using this also in more static environment as a political convention, as an example. But when you have to do this kind of venue where you might have more static camera placement, but you have to do the cabling in advance before people enter the room. And that takes time and a bunch of cabling, and you have to gaffer these, and you have to secure them, and you have to, it's as 100 meters of cabling just for having 3-4 cameras in a venue. And that's where we are saving time, because now we can just have wireless camera brought in, but still have the high quality connection with the low latency. And that's where I think this is where the technology is a game changer. It's the flexibility. We can place cameras where we were not used to place cameras. It's easy to deploy because it's just battery connected, more or less like a smartphone, so to speak. So it's similar to that.
On that question itself, just 1 minute, Vika.
Yeah.
How did you selected the deployment sites? So, like, what was the criteria? Like this, as you mentioned, the flexibility that you have. So that was more from a remote location or OB-WAN perspective, or also in studios, did it help you to gain this flexibility and efficiency?
Yeah, in really both cases, we have deployed it as our breakfast studio, which is a light entertainment studio. So there we have a studio environment with a fixed setup with the 5G, and because again you have this roaming camera rack where we can replace all the equipment, and then there's the ad hoc, the more nomadic, where we have to. I mean, it's easy to have it in a studio environment because that's like a factory. That's our factory to make content. But it get more tricky when you have to deploy it in a temporary installation where you maybe just getting there and then spend a couple of hours on that location doing production. So we have both these cases, and different a lot of different use cases, you could say, as a different type of content is produced this way.
How do you see then, in this kind of high-end events like the Eurovision Song Contest that is kind of running this week? So what kind of opportunities you see in those kind of places or those kind of productions?
Yeah, when you see a production like Eurovision or all kind of tier 1 event, a tier 1 event, one thing is the host event itself, the event what is going on the stage. And what we have seen now is that the technology is so mature that you can actually replace what is already there. That would be one thing where you could do that. But in this kind of event, you really, really need a lot of security and a reliable connection. So you would prefer to have more of your camera as a wide. So the host production, you wouldn't replace everything with a 5G network, but you might be able to have the steady camera on the stage that way around. But around all kind of events, sports, entertainment, and so on, there's a lot of other unilateral events, meaning that the different countries, you might receive the host signal, and that's one production unit doing that. But then you have a press center where there's multiple different as a stand-ups and cameras doing interviews, doing small studio setup, and so on. And there again, you need connectivity. And that's really where you will see that there's a lot of congestion in a press center like that. So you would like to find a proper way to connect it. We saw it the other day with the Pope in Rome. Everybody was there, all media was there, and in the hours before the announcement of the Pope, everybody were using a cellular network. That was great, but exactly the hour before the announcement, so many people entered that space, and there was congestion in the network, so the mobile network couldn't be used for live contribution, and we had to switch over to satellite-based IP connectivity. And that's where, again, an event will benefit from the private network deployment that will really be the key to a secure and reliable connection. So, and you will see the same as you have it on venues like a sports event. There might be one team as one production unit doing the match itself, but there's pre and post interview going on. There's small studio sets. So all right holder will have production crew around the match. And all these production crew need today to be cabled or had very, very advanced wireless setup, which take a lot of time and effort. And they could benefit from private network easily and will save us a lot of cost and resources of setting up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. To continue on that point, Martin, you mentioned about the reliable reliable network connectivity with the private 5G. Can you elaborate few aspects on the planning behind spectrum allocation, as well as some of the network security, compliance, and data privacy, the basic aspects that you expect from any deployment?
Yeah. Well, we are still in the early days when it comes to the planning part of this, and that's I mean, in Europe it is decided that the N77 band would be used for this kind of deployment as a temporary low power deployment of private 5G network, but the rollout of the license is still in test, and that also means that in Denmark, the authorities need at least, they're saying, 3 weeks to do their planning and coordination. Planning and coordination in that case is mostly about asking someone from defense and so on about if someone else is using the spectrum. But that's the first step, and definitely something that needs to be more be changed, because that way of, I mean, as a news provider, 3 weeks prior, I have no clue what will happen in 3 weeks' time. You might work for some sports events and so on. So that they are guilty, and the time around the planning should be different. We are still learning about the coverage, and that's of course as one of the more challenging thing, that understand what does one radio mean and what does multiple radio means. And you should also remember that when I'm talking about the professional user of this, we are talking about upstreaming. We're not talking about downstreaming. So everything people know from a mobile network, mobile handset, have nothing to do with what we are doing. We are doing it's the opposite way around. That's also one of the key things why we're using private network and not the commercial, because we can change the priorities, the TDD pattern, so to speak. So we favorize as uplink to downlink, and the planning for the radio is still which is the challenge, so to ensure that we get the coverage of the venue, or the position where the camera is placed. So we are taking small steps right now to try to learn that. We understand from we have the experience from more than 30, 40 years with wireless technology. So it's not a new thing to work wireless, but and also in the higher bands. Normally video band is 2.1, 2.3 gigahertz, and now we're talking 3.8. So it's 1 gigahertz about what we are used to. But all the stuff about to learning this is still a challenge. Still challenge to get a kind of mapping of where is the coverage area, because I mean it's wireless, you can't see it. So
It's a little bit of a black magic, when it's wireless.
yeah, and I think that's why we need a kind of heat map apps or something that so we can just walk around and say, okay, we expect the camera to roam around here and there, and then find out is there something, does it work here in an easy way to have this kind of stuff. Also because we believe so much in this technology that we don't expect in the future to have a network engineer on site. At least for lower tiers event, it should be deployable just with the user. And the user in this case would be a photographer. I mean, his main focus is to hand the camera and not to be a network design operator. That's not his business. And what we have learned so far with the radio is that we're getting close to that point. We are not there yet. We still have to have a specialist on site to do the radio planning, but we can see that it looks like this will be able to be handled by in a more simple way by the crew, which is already there.
How do you see the security part, that how to play the network architecture, that you have your own radio, you have your own core, you have subscriber management completely in your own hands. So how do you see that from the security perspective? Is that a topic?
It is the topic. It is a topic, and it's definitely also as something that we are focusing more and more on. We are learning also in our industry. So security-wise, I mean, by design, we know and understand that the 5G technology is probably a more secure technology than, example, Wi-Fi. But still, of course, it's a radio system. It can be disturbed in many different ways, and that's one thing that we have to deal with. That's not a big difference from the wireless microphone we have. That's the same issue. So it's the known risk, and then also why we are aware what is our backup plan for that. When it comes to the way our industry is moving with fast speeds into more remote production setup. So instead of having a production truck on site, more and more production is done. So you have the camera on the venue and then feed the raw camera footage back to a centralized data center and production hub. And that's where you do the switching. So you don't have the production as that part of the production staff on site. It's contribution back to wherever that data center is. And of course, that need a more resilient and secure as a connectivity. We have experimented with bringing the Kumicore core as a centralized that in our data center. So instead of bringing the heavy IT equipment on site, we just need to deploy a radio wire and connect that via a layer 2 connection, and that works really, really well. And for us, it's a fast and secure way of connecting the camera on the production side, and it's definitely also as a security-wise a more clever way of doing it, and it is also easy to make a kind of redundancy in the network by doing it that way.
Morten, are you using or planning to use some of the 5G capabilities, including 5G Advanced or network slicing, or maybe even AI-driven automation in this?
Yeah. Yeah. Even in our own private network, the slicing makes sense because a lot of the equipment, the first thing you need to do is to control the equipment. You need to talk to the equipment. You don't, if I'm not communicating with the device, the camera or the microphone, whatever it is, the first thing if there's no communication, I don't need to start video streaming because then I'm out of control. So having prioritized as a traffic for controlling is definitely the way to go. And I mean, that's just one slice. And then we have the in-ear system and the communication, the push to talk, whatever setup you have for that, which is another service. And this different type of layer will, in my opinion, be you need to manage that traffic more controlled. They have also different characteristics, so you might need to give them different resources in the network, and that's where the slicing as even a private network makes sense. The other thing is on site, we're also seeing that this is a service we could share between as a multiple stakeholder. It might be a private network, meaning that it's dedicated spectrum, but when we enter a press center, we might be several media sharing this, and therefore we also need to have as a secure way of securing what we're using, who's getting what, basically. Then you're talking about the AI, and that's as any kind of clever assistant will be welcome, and that's what I would expect that we are getting. That we get some of this. I can't see the network. I cannot fully get the control of the management of this. This is where AI will, in my opinion, make sense to have this kind of assistant from AI. And as we are talking about video traffic, and we're talking about, especially one thing that we get from the private network is that we can make it ultra low latency in the production chain, which is huge different from the commercial network into the private network. We're talking about in a commercial network, the contribution will be typically 1.5 second. Imagine to have a video conference with that. And when we're going on private network, we will be below 200 milliseconds with the same device, the same video quality. So, but to optimize all this kind of traffic, AI is definitely an interesting technology to have this real-time adjustment and control of everything in the network.
Mika?
Yeah, well, I think this is really a great example about that. When we have a network, when we are talking about the private network, it's an enabler. And now we have kind of learned that behind the camera there are many other signals going through, and it has some kind of implications where the people are working, what kind of work conditions they have, how much we have to move stuff from one place to another, and so on. So when talking about the private networks, it's all about the application and different kind of application, different kind of requirements. So this is so great to hear that Morten's to tell the story that how it's changing. Of course, there are things that can be done better, and it's always evolving kind of a thing, but it's so great to hear, and it has been really a pleasure to be part of this journey and to be part of the journey also in the futures.
Absolutely, Morten. I have one more question before we wrap up. This is more related to how you are managing the end-to-end deployment. Is it in-house? Are you having a managed service? Are you leveraging partner ecosystem? I mean, basically, I want to understand what's your partner ecosystem and your in-house collaboration looks like, and what's your view on that?
Yeah, really good question. And I have to say, even being a national broadcaster in Denmark, we are a small operation. So the team who handle this is basically two persons. There's one coming from more IT, and my colleague Jens, who is a photographer and used to, but also specialists in connectivity. So I have to say it's not our IT department who handle this. This is actually handled by operation, and then we have one colleague from. It's because internally, we have our production network is one thing, and the corporated network, IT network, is another thing. So the IT department and production network is two separate layers, and so it's a small team. We're coming from outside, from the field, with experience from the field, from satellite, from public as a mobile network, and have now taken the private network in our hands, and taking that technology into the broadcast infrastructure. And that's, of course, a little bit a challenge, because where does this kind of technology really belong? Also because the potential is, I'm really talking about, live media production, but the same network at the same venue could be used for a lot of other sensors. It could be statistic for the football player, or it could be for the pay terminal for the entrance to the venue where we are covering, and so we could be sharing a lot of these capacity, and then it's definitely another as a game, and not necessarily something that we should deploy as production crew. I would say that I'm not really. I would expect in the future that someone will handle this kind of technology in media industry. We're used to have rental companies. So if I need a wireless camera, I will rent it from someone who's specialized in that. And if that's a customer related camera or it's a 5G camera, it's not a big deal. It's not that different. So it's the same with radio microphone and so on. Everything is part of a rental agreement. And that's probably where we will see 5G in the future be placed. So I'm not really expecting this to be something that the telco could handle, because that could be your next question, what role do they play? And they play absolutely no role in this. This is we're doing this ourselves with Kumiko, but no one from any mobile network operator is involved in this operation at all. And I think that's one of the learnings and takeaway. People should be really aware that yes, you can do it yourself. You don't need to call those you normally do all the mobile broadband connection with.
Thank you. Mika, you have any last thoughts that you would like to share?
No, not really. I think we covered this topic very, very well, and I think it's changing the world, that how we are, because the media industry is also going through the huge change at the moment. There is more and more content, created every single day, and there are more channels and more coverage done. So it's more than just a private.
Thank you so much, Morten, for taking time to talk to us and sharing all the insights on the successful deployment of your private 5G network. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting.
You're welcome.